stuff, man. Like you're a busy man, so I'm not gonna try to hold you too long, and I will go ahead and get into it. So,
yeah, man, appreciate it.
I think so. You've heard of BlurredCon, right? I know you've heard of DreamCon. I don't know if you heard of BlurredCon in DC.
I actually haven't, but I know of DreamCon.
Yeah. So BlurredCon is essentially, BlurredCon was a while before DreamCon, but it's essentially like the black nerd convention. Like DreamCon is more like creator centric, but this is like for the people type shit. But I have a panel there, and I'm doing my panel on cultural gatekeeping. As you know, again, you talked about it on your pod a couple times in regards to gatekeeping when it comes to black culture and music and all that good stuff. But obviously, being at a fucking nerd comic anime convention, is a lot of Asian culture around, from people wearing anime characters to the merchandise people are making that has Chinese writing script or Japanese kanji and all that good stuff. I'm curious, have you ever perceived or felt a way about so many, like maybe not your culture specifically, not being Japanese, I know you're Filipino, but just seeing Asian culture like being used so prominently by everyone else for being so popular over here now?
I'm gonna be honest, no. If anything, the shock to me was the counter of like just the concept of like cultural appropriation, because coming from my background, I was born in the Philippines, and then I came here when I was 8 or 9. And I don't know if this is the same way for every Asian country, but at least in Filipino culture, like, and also with the history of just the Philippines in general, we were invaded by Spain, Japan a couple times, America. So like, we're pretty, like, we are a mixture of a bunch of different cultures, just even within our language. But essentially in our culture, like mixing cultures, taking inspiration from other cultures is like normal. So, you know, when I came to America, that's especially in America, when this is the place where there's a bunch of different races, different ethnicities and all of that. I just thought that was the norm. But then as I grew up, obviously I became more knowledgeable about certain viewpoints. So the concept of like cultural appropriation to me was kind of like a shock, like, oh, okay, there is a problem with this. And then, you know, I heard people's perspectives on it. Why people have a problem with it, and it makes sense. It makes sense, but that was the shock to me.
It's always conflicting with me, because to get to your point, like I've grown up and I understand the negative that comes from cultural appropriation, and usually it's the like exploiting it for monetary gain. But it always is kind of weird to me being a black guy, and I've seen how black culture, rap music, the styles that we cultivate have been monopolized to so many extents. But then it's also kind of weird because we lock down so much in saying as black people we need to protect this, we need to gatekeep people from being in rap or whatever it may be. But then on the flip side, there's like, especially nowadays, there's so much Asian influence in a lot of the stuff that we do, whether that be from food, because you see Asian food everywhere now, even in places like Atlanta, there's like a million Asian fusion restaurants, and especially in the anime front, where people are rocking anime characters everywhere now. They're doing it in music in regards to a lot of the fusion stuff that's going on. And then we're looking at somebody like a Meg Thee Stallion or Michael B. Jordan, these like popular black figures are heavily influenced by Japanese and Asian culture now. And I don't know, it's that weird duality of like, okay, we can't be hypocrites and just try to like lock down what our culture is and everything about it, but at the same time, enjoy these other cultures. Granted, I do understand, like, I guess the better question would be, because I'm kind of rambling now, where does that fine line of appropriation versus appreciation kind of stand for you?
For me, I think intent plays a big factor for me. I think when you go about something in a respectful way, or maybe your intent isn't even like to pay homage, but just have fun with it. There's no malicious intent. You may even make a mistake here and there, but if I know, like, in your heart of hearts, there was good intentions behind this piece of work, then I personally don't have a problem with it. Because again, like, when I grew up, when I heard, a white dude or just like a foreigner, like, use Filipino slang, use Filipino language, like, it was cool to me. Like, oh my God, okay, you know ball, like that type of shit. So for me, it's the biggest factor has always been like respect and intent.
Do you feel like you can appreciate a culture and still monetize from that culture?
I think so.
If I just went out tomorrow and started making kimonos or traditional Filipino garbs and just started selling them as is, and I've never been over there or I'm not directly connected, is it not like kind of weird to you?
It is weird. And like, as a Filipino myself, do you really know? Like, my question would be, do you really know what you're talking about? You know what I'm saying? like I'm gonna question your validity from that front, and then I'm gonna make my decision on if your product is good. Yeah, because if I go to an Asian restaurant and like there's not a single Asian person there, I'm kind of questioning things like how good is this, how genuine is the food, so on and so forth. But yeah, no, I think what you're saying is a good point though. Like there is like cause for pause, like definitely. Like, I think that's valid. So
yeah, I feel like you can make some gain off of it. I feel like you can, but to your point, I think ethically it's about how you approach it. But whenever money is involved in stuff like that, it's like, okay, do you truly appreciate it, or is it a thing to where you're making a form of income or a stream of revenue off of that? So how altruistic are your intent there in regards to promoting that?
yeah, no, I think that's where intent comes in, right? Because if you really appreciate the culture, because I think what DreamCon is doing is like fantastic. Like for real. I think even within their info, it's always like there's a specific line I think that says like celebrating anime culture, like Japanese culture. You know what I'm saying? On the flip side, I don't know if you saw this clip on TikTok, but essentially there was this group that went on Dragon's Den, and they were trying to promote like this boba product. It was like to go boba essentially, and it was made by white people, and they were like essentially just shitting on like the roots of how boba is made, like the ingredients. This is a better version off of what already exists. This is a version where you know what you're getting, as opposed to these other companies that just put shit in there. And mind you, again, this is coming from like non-Asians, white people, and that right there to me, like you can take that as disrespect.
That's insane. We're making a white alternative for that's crazy. Because that's another thing too in regard that I've noticed in certain aspects. It's, sometimes with anime specifically, you'll see it where it's never like the raw, unfiltered version of that content. It's always like gentrified to an extent for American consumption, so you can like understand this or consume this better, which is kind of off to me because I don't feel like it's needed. And I use this example a couple times because I remember when Squid Games came out specifically. I went to college in like the deep rural South where I knew some racist people out there, like personally, just because I had to interact with them every day. And when Squid Games came out, I saw a crazy amount of white hick country people that do not like, or maybe it's not they don't like them, they're just really prejudiced when it comes to other people. They love the fuck out of Squid Games. They watched it subbed. Like, they didn't watch like the English dub translation, they were watching it subbed. So when I see stuff like that, I'm like, okay, even people that don't necessarily agree with your rights or you as an individual still can take that content in without it needing to be altered to fit the audience that you think won't like this. And again, that's another conversation as far as like corporations and how they see their demographic. But I say that to say again, in regards to how do you have any issues with, well, you brought it up to an extent around the boba stuff, but in regards to like Asian culture being like altered to this Americanized, westernized version, because you see in a lot of restaurants, because you see a lot of like fusion restaurants, especially in Atlanta. I see a lot of like soul food and soul food. I see a lot of soul food and Vietnamese restaurants specifically, Japanese a lot as well, where they're just like, okay, we're a fusion restaurant, but the owner / chef isn't necessarily an Asian person, but he's like toured or like studied underneath Asian people. And he's like making this big fusion.
Personally, that's just something I honestly have never really thought about up until you brought it up for real. Like my fat ass, low key, if the food's good, I mean, hey, hey, let me try it out. But yeah, I mean, like I said in the beginning of this call, like, from my background, just sharing culture is normal in like where I come from. I feel like I'm in a group where pretty racially diverse as well in my family. So like sharing culture is just normal to me. So again, ultimately it comes down to intent, and in some of these things you may not know the intent. So that's kind of the tough part. Like, you don't know if that restaurant has good intents behind their product unless they really show their ass. So that's kind of where it gets tricky. But
did you ever feel like you had to kind of reevaluate how you operated in regards to, because obviously you enjoy a lot of Black culture stuff. We talked about the music you enjoy. Obviously, like clothing wise, you seem like you have a lot of like American streetwear is like your kind of typical clothing. Is that just something you just naturally gravitated to, or is that something you ever like looked at like, hey, am I going about this the right way and like consuming how I'm consuming this media or this whatever it may be. And even because I don't know how much, I can't say you put a lot of Black culture in your content. I think that's generally just you, who you are as an individual. So I can't say that, but I don't know if you ever like had that second thought.
Yeah, no, I've definitely had that second thought. Especially as I've gotten older and I've had more mature conversations.
Mhm.
But I feel like from my background and the way like I just developed my personality, I think for me, it comes from a place of I'm an immigrant that came to America that was trying to assimilate to American culture, right? And, you know, I was trying to develop a English accent that wasn't, it didn't sound like I had an Asian accent. So I could fit in with the culture. You know, they wouldn't look at me as the immigrant with the accent. Like I wanted to be viewed as one of them essentially.
Mhm.
So from that perspective, like trying to assimilate to American culture, a lot of that is intertwined with Black culture. You know what I'm saying? So it just kind of depends on the media that you watch as well. Like I feel like depending on like your attempt to assimilate to American culture, I feel like you're either gonna lean towards the white side or like towards the Black side. You know what I'm saying? So, and I feel like with you know, Black people's influence on basketball, how I gravitated towards basketball, hip hop music as well, how that has dominated like pop music. I feel like that's like a big reason as to why my interests aligned the way that they did, which then aligned with the people that I met, the friends that I made, and the language that we speak with each other. So
How about regards to this kind of shift over into representation a little bit? I know for Black people, seeing us in a lot of the media we watch is really important. And there's been a little bit of, because I don't know how much you're in the nerd space at all, but I know there's been a conversation for a little bit where Black people's portrayal in something like anime obviously hasn't been the most prevalent nor the best represented. Like if you see Mr. Popo in Dragon Ball originally pretty much being blackface, and there being certain artists who like have really great examples of how Black people should look. I'm curious, like as far as in the media you take in, because I'm assuming you watch a lot of Western media too, just from being over here and trying to assimilate. Did you ever question the representation of people that look like you in the medium and how they're portrayed?
definitely more recently, like in the last couple of years, just again, just me maturing. But yeah, I definitely questioned it, and looking back, I definitely am more critical of like how we're represented, because I always felt as if like Asians are represented in like a scrawny, nerdy way that like they can't speak English fluently most of the time, and even nerdy, like most of the time it's not portrayed as just being smart. It's specifically being like a geek, a dork, you know what I'm saying, like a math nerd that does your homework, all these different things. So yeah, I think Asian representation definitely needs some work. I actually made a video on it, and I think it, like this year specifically, it's made some strides towards the right direction in terms of like breaking some of these stereotypes. But yeah, no, I've definitely thought about it for real.
Have you ever felt, I'm not gonna say seen, because it is Japanese too, because I don't know how much anime or just cartoons or animation stuff you watched in regards to that realm. And I know you're not Japanese, so you may not see like a direct correlation to it because you're not Vietnamese, you're Filipino. But do you ever feel like a sort of like representation, like oh, that guy looks like me when you're watching anime or any Asian content like that? Or is it only in American animation where you see a dude like a Ned from Spider-Man or other characters like that where you're like, okay, I see me?
Yeah, weirdly enough, now that you mention it, I actually do see more representation of Filipinos specifically, more in Western media than like Japanese media. Now that I'm really thinking about it, like the Ned from Spider-Man, hell, even like Bruno Mars, like even in the content realm, like Valkyrie, like all of that. Like there is decent representation in Western media for Filipinos, but now that I think, like I literally can't think of a Filipino anime character. Like I don't know.
There may be one I'm forgetting about, because usually they're from Japan, they're Japanese, but I know they'll have like certain characters. If you're watching like Kuroko no Basket, where it's like a sports anime, they'll have like different characters from different places on there. But like I was legit could not think. I was trying to think of a Filipino character in anime, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always thought that was interesting, because I know with me, like when I saw like a Green Lantern John Stewart on TV, I'm like, oh shit, he looks like me, and he's with Superman. But I was always curious, like if Asian people watched anime and kind of had that same feeling of like, oh, that's somebody that's maybe doesn't look just like me because the art style can kind of be a little bit different, but it's somebody in Asian content that's an Asian character that looks like me. Well, I didn't know if that was specifically to the particular national origin that you have. Like, because with Black folks, it's usually like any Black person I feel represented by. But I don't know what Asian people, it's like, okay, I only feel it with Vietnamese people or only a Japanese character, not just all Asian people as a whole.
Yeah, no, I actually don't think so. I think it's kind of like, I guess like white people watching American media. I don't think like white people are saying, yo, like I'm being represented, like it's just another TV show for them. So I think like, Japanese people or Asian people in general just watching like anime and manga, like I don't think there's a like this or that person looks like it's just another story for them, you know what I'm saying? But when I look at Asians within Western media, because of the fact that like we are minorities within this country, I do think the conversation is different. But because like when you talk about Asian media, that's like it is predominantly Asian. You're not looking for representation in the media where you are the majority, I feel like. So
oh man, I don't want to hold you too much longer. Again, thanks so much for the time and doing this on short notice. For people that are watching this, because I may just put this up on the channel and cut this up for the panel itself as well. Do you want to let people know who you are, where they can find you, what kind of content you do?
Bsolz, I got like 4 channels. I'm gonna just rep the one on my shirt. I have a podcast. Let's Keep It a Buck. Let's Keep It a Buck on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, all of that.
Yeah, they make dope stuff. I've legit I'm gonna sound like a damn fangirl, but I've been watching you guys for at least the last like 4 to 5 years, whether it be LKAB, then I was following back when you were doing the video essays and type shit. But again, thanks so much for coming on, man. And yeah, I will see you next time.